Okay, it has been brought to my attention that a lot of guys with walker mowers have no idea how to service them, even basic servicing. A lot of people have been contacting me about what do I do for this, how do I check this, all things that their dealers should have gone over, but apparently did not. I have no idea why, but the dealers have not gone over this when they bought the mowers, and some guys are buying them used and they just didn't have the information from a dealer. So first things first, go on to Google, any Google search, and type in the walker mower, just put like walker MTGHS manual, and a million of them will pop up, all PDF. Some aren't, but find the one for your particular mower and download the manual. They're all free, and it'll give you everything in there, everything I'm going to tell you and then some. Walkers do have a lot higher maintenance than a lot of other mowers, but to me it's worth it. But either way, you have the mower, so there are important things that you need to know. One of the big things is that a lot of guys are asking me questions that are very, very simple things to check maintenance wise, and things to do, and things that if you don't do are going to be extremely expensive for you in the long run. So either way, whether they have the information or not, whether it was given to them properly or not, this is just going to be a quick overview on the very basic things you need to be doing. To get into more detailed stuff, I'm not going to make a full video on that. That could take hours. Download the manual and just go through the manual. This is your mower, this is what makes you money, and if it's down, you're only going to lose money. So it's on you to do this, and you need to find this information. So let's just get into some of the very basic stuff. Now, this is my walker MTGHS. This is a 2004 model. Any of you guys have been following me for a long period of time know that this is practically a new mower. I've put a new deck on it, has a brand new engine on it. Was EFI originally, it is now a carbureted engine, but I've pretty much replaced everything on this, or the dealer that I bought it from used has replaced everything, and so therefore it is still a very good machine, and this thing makes me tons of money every year. But there's a lot of basic things I do to make sure that happens. Now, first of all, there are a ton of grease fittings on these mowers, and they are everywhere. I'm not going to go over every single one. Just the basic ones you need to be doing. As far as greasing goes, I grease all of my mowers. I try to do it every week. Sometimes in the spring when it's real busy, it happens every 2 weeks, but the frequency of how often you grease depends greatly on two things. One, how much are you using that machine, and two, the type of grease you are using. For example, I will show you. I use Lucas Red and Tacky grease. I buy it by the case. It lasts a lot longer. I've bought other types of cheap grease in the past, and they just don't last, and you'll know whether your grease is lasting, okay? So, for instance, we'll take these pivot points right here, and you grease these, and a week later, you're pumping 7-8 pumps of grease into them before it starts coming out, before you know it's full, and you know that this thing's going through a lot of grease. Now, when I use the Red and Tacky, I'll fill them right up, get them full, however many pumps it takes to fill it up before the grease starts coming out, and I know it's full, and I'll use the crap out of this machine for 2 weeks, and at the end of that 2 weeks I'll put like 2 pumps in it, and it's already coming out, which tells me there's still a lot of grease in there, which tells me the grease is holding up. So that changes the frequency and how often I have to do it. Now, when you're running one of these mowers, I believe there's like 47 or 48 grease fittings on this mower. They are everywhere. They're underneath the seat, they're in the back, they're all over the deck. So if you want to cut down your time on greasing, spend the money and buy a good quality grease. I'm not saying you have to buy the kind that I buy, but just something good quality. Now, there's a lot of grease points that people don't know about underneath here. Your main grease points I would really focus on, besides all your deck pivot points and all the other grease fittings underneath. These are main grease points you really need to be focused on, that will burn up the most grease because of the high RPMs that they run at. Now, underneath here, down in the U-joint, there's a grease fitting in there, okay? There is also one on the shaft back there. You can pull the quick release and pull that right off. You have a 7/16 nut on each side of this. You loosen them up, you slide this back, lift it up. comes right off. Very important grease fitting right here. And then the other one is right down in there inside the U-joint. If you can't turn this, because when it's pivoted one direction or the other, because of the angle it goes at, you can't get a grease gun down in there. So you turn it. Now, right now this is open, so I can easily get a grease gun on that. But if you can't and it's in the other position, pull the quick release on your drive shaft, and the drive shaft will separate, and then you can turn this freely by hand. And it'll be a little tough because you're rotating the blades at the same time, but turn it until this opens up and you can get the grease fitting or grease gun in there. So that one there, and another one up mid shaft are very important. Now, as far as your gearboxes, okay, there's a 7/16 nut on each one. I already took them off. This pops right off. Now you have right there's an Allen key screw. There's one there, there's one on the back side of this center T-box here, and there's one right there. Now what you do when you fill these up, when you start filling any one of these, it runs through these tubes to the other one. So you don't want to fill this all the way up and then go fill that all the way up, because you're going to be over full. Once you fill in here, you wait, because you use a real thick grease or real thick gear oil. You put it in here and you wait. It'll run down and it'll level itself out. I only fill these about halfway. Some guys fill them 3/4 of the way. I believe the manual says till it just covers the bottom gear in there. It's really hard to see down in there. You'll need a flashlight to do it, but you should be checking these. I check them usually in the spring when I'm using this mower a lot. I'll check them every 2 weeks. Some guys like to check them every week, but you know, as long as I'm not seeing gear fluid down on the deck here or underneath, as long as I'm not seeing any gear fluid there, I don't worry about it too much, you know. And then I usually check it every 2 weeks. I know it's usually fine. But if you see a leak anywhere, even a slow leak, some fluid building up around here, it's leaking, you better be checking this thing at least once a week, okay? Now, the recommended fluid for those gearboxes there is 80/90, 80 W90 weight thick gear oil. That's what they recommend for there. I put straight Lucas in there, straight Lucas oil stabilizer. I've never had an issue. That's what I've always run in them, and it's always worked fine. It works in this one. I run the same thing in my new Walker B with the 56-inch side discharge deck. I've never had a problem. So very important, make sure you are checking that. Right down here on the side of the seat is a lever. Pull it forward and the seat lifts up. You can get to everything that's underneath here. Now for your hydros, it actually says right on these caps, it says service with Mobile One 1550 synthetic oil. My Walker B says 2050. All of my other mowers, my Right Stander, my Great Dane, my Ferris, the Scag Tiger Cat that I had, the Turf Tiger I had, they all say 2050. So I use 2050 in everything right here. Mobile One 2050 Advanced Full Synthetic. That's what I put in every single hydro unit I have on every mower, regardless of what the manual says. I've never had an issue. It's what my dealer recommends for my Walker mowers. It's what my dealer recommends for my Wright mowers, the Scag mowers. They all recommend 2050. The manual for my Walker B says 2050. The manual for this one says 1550. You can use either one. It's not going to matter. You'll be fine either way you go. Okay. Here is a dipstick to check your transmission or your trans gear for your drive, all your hydros. You check the fluid through there. Dipstick for the oil. One quick keynote to remember: if you have, this is a general rule of thumb, if you have a yellow cap for changing your or for checking your oil, what you do when you change it or when you check your oil, you set the dipstick down in there and then you pull it out and you check it. If you have a black cap, you screw it all the way in and then unscrew it and pull it out to check it to get a proper reading. Yellow caps, you just set it down on there and then pull it out. Okay, general rule of thumb. This Kohler engine, the manual calls for 1030. The Kohler engine in my B19 also calls for 1030, or you can use 1040. All my engines all get 1040. I use 1040 in everything. So I've never had an issue. My dealers, I've talked to them about it, and they say Kawasaki recommends 1040 in all their engines now. Briggs is doing the same thing, and they said it won't be long before Kohler's recommending it too. So 1030 is what they call for. You can run 1040 without issue. It's strictly up to you. Either way, the most important thing is making sure there's oil in there and is at the proper level. Very important. When you're checking your hydros, I don't know if you can see, there's a line down there, and it only requires a very little bit to be in there. A lot of people fill these up. Bad move, because once this thing heats up and it builds pressure, it's going to push up and it'll build up too much pressure in this cap. You're going to get leaks, you'll blow out seals. If you need to check to see if there's any air in the system, there is a bolt right there. You unscrew that bolt and fluid should come out of there. If fluid does not come out of there, you take this cap off and you pour fluid in your reservoir, a very little bit at a time until it seeps out of that hole. Then you screw that back in, and then make sure this is still topped off to that bottom line. That will purge all the air out of your hydro units. There's a bolt on each one. You can't really see that one down there, but it's underneath the lever. Okay, very important. Other thing you should be checking on a regular basis is your tire pressures. If your tire pressures are off, your deck is not going to cut correctly. Now for the front of my deck, I have run flats on here. I don't ever have to put air in them. You know, they're run flats. Very self-explanatory. But if you don't have run flats, Walker calls for 20 pounds of pressure in these tires and 20 pounds of pressure in your tail tires. They call for 15 pounds of pressure in your drive tires. Okay, these are the 10 and a half, 18 by 10 and a half dash 10 low profile tires. Walker also makes an all-terrain tire. But for the 18 by 10 and a half dash 10, what they call their low profile tire, they call for 15 pounds of pressure in these. Very important. So make sure all your air pressures are where they need to be. As far as grease fittings, like I said, you have grease fittings down here, you have one down there, you have grease fitting there, 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 there. There's grease fittings way down there on these fronts that people forget about. There's a grease fitting down there for, if you can see it down there, for the tension pulley for your blower fan. There's just grease fittings everywhere on this, and you need to make sure they stay greased. As far as your air filter goes, it is a two-part filter. The inner filter, I just check it every time to make sure it's okay. Sometimes those inner filters like to deteriorate. The outer filter, when I pull it out, I blow it out with an air gun, and I do it at least once a week. More so during the hot summer when things are really dry outside. I make sure that thing is blown out. If your engine is not breathing right, it is going to run like crap and you will burn through twice as much fuel. So your air filter is very important, should be checked on a weekly basis. Some Walker mowers, I know mine here, there is a little engine maintenance information right there. Okay, very basic things. You should be checking them often. Especially your engine oil, your gearbox fluid, your transmission fluid. You should be checking all of that on a regular basis. I recommend checking all those on a weekly basis, if not weekly, 2 weeks at most. Engine oil every day. Absolutely, before you start it first thing in the morning, because after it's been sitting all night, that's when you're going to get your most accurate reading. So that should be the first thing you check every morning, no matter what kind of mower it is. Check it every morning. And then if you're mowing a lot of properties, you got an 8-10 hour day, check it again midday. You know, it doesn't have to be dead on accurate midday. Check it just to make sure there's oil in there. One big thing you need to be checking. Now, I sharpen my blades every week, but one of the big things that I always check for when I take the blades off is I look at the bottom of the seal. Okay, when you take this nut off and you pull the blade in the cup as one unit, pull it right off, there's a seal under there. There's a plate across, and that's the bottom of your gearbox. You need to make sure there's no leaking, no drippage around there. If you have a leak coming out of that box, you'll have fluid inside the cup right there when you take it off, because it drips down into that cup and it holds it in there. So if you see any fluid in there, then you have a leak and you'll need to replace the seal in there. Now, a lot of those seals look like I believe I have some right here. They're just little tiny thin paper seals. Well, those seals are the ones that go right there in between the tube and the gearbox is where that paper seal goes. That's all that holds it, or that's all that's in between there. Now, I know I have some in here somewhere, right here. See that seal right there? For Peerless Gear 788029. This seal right there is what you will find in the bottom of that gearbox. They're very easy to change out. They're cheap to replace, but that seal goes sometimes, and that's where you'll start leaking fluid. So another reason why you really need to be checking to make sure that your fluid is where it needs to be, because I've had a couple leaks under there, and I ran the mower for another week just until I got the seal and I could change it, and it wasn't leaking that bad, and it got me through just fine, but I was checking that fluid every day. So another very important thing you need to be checking on a regular basis. Okay, one final thing that you need to keep an eye on. This is something that I do on a regular basis. Usually every time I dump the hopper, I just check real quick. It takes 2 seconds. Okay, excuse this hopper, very dirty. Some cracks in there, over there. It's just all the years of abuse this thing has taken. But anyway, up here is your sensor. Okay, these are cheap. They're like 20 bucks, I think. Easy to replace. I've only ever replaced it once. And sometimes these wires come off. Now this is your alarm, and it tells you when your hopper is full. Okay, so when you're bagging grass and your oscillator is going back and forth, this right here, this is your sensor. When this starts hitting grass, it'll start every time this hits grass. So when your hopper fills up and it comes back across and this hits grass, it makes your alarm start going off to let you know the hopper's full. If this doesn't go off, it's going to keep putting grass in there until it fills up this whole tube, fills up all the way down to your deck, and you're going to be clogging a lot. So you need this thing to work. Every once in a while, I'll dump the grass out and I'll forget to check it. And then all of a sudden I can hear by the sound of the deck that it's getting clogged up. And I'll come in here and find out that one of these wires is like that. It's just hanging down because grass, leaves, everything get packed in here. And sometimes when you dump it, the grass is so wet, thick, and heavy, it holds against these because it packs in there too. And when you dump it out, the weight of it pulls one of these off. And I'll look inside here and I'll see that, I'll dump it out and I'll see that one of these wires is dangling like that. So you always want to make sure they're plugged in. So just to sum it up, that's just basic. Like I said, there's a lot of other things that, you know, every 100 hours, every 500 hours, things like that you need to be checking on, you need to be aware of, and you need to watch. But like I said, download the manuals. They're free. They're all over the internet. They're free. If you don't have one and your dealer didn't give you a manual, or if you bought the unit used and you just didn't get a manual with it, download it. That's the first thing you should do on any mower you buy. If you don't have a manual, is find it online and download it. They're pretty much free everywhere. There's a million sites that try to charge you for them. There's always someone that has one for free. So download it, print it off, save it to your phone, save it to your computer, do whatever, but you need to have a manual for your mower. If you don't, you're only hurting yourself, because you're only going to end up with problems and all stuff you could have fixed or maintained on your own. I am a big proponent of, you should be doing at least the majority or the basic every week, every couple week maintenance items on your equipment, versus sending them out all the time and paying people. You're just dumping your profits into paying other people to fix your stuff on things that you could do on your own. So just the basic stuff. I hope this helps anyone that, you know, has questions about walkers and basic things you need to do, the types of fluids you need to use, so on and so forth. I gave you recommendations on the things that I use, and some are the same as the manual, some's a little different, but everything that I use I've verified with either the manufacturer or with my dealers, and everything I use is kosher. Everything's good to go. I've never had an issue with the fluids or any of the stuff that I use. Every manufacturer has a rep, okay? and you need to know who the rep is in your area for the type of equipment you use. That rep is there to help you. If you're having an issue with your dealer, you can bypass your dealer and go right to that rep. That's what they're there for. They'll answer any questions you have. They'll help you out with getting anything you need to get. If for whatever reason you can't find the manual online, you go to the dealer and ask them for a copy of a manual for that particular mower, and they can't get it for you, or they, for whatever reason, won't give it to you. Find that rep for your area and bypass the dealer. They will get it for you. If they don't keep you happy, you don't buy their equipment, and those dealers don't sell the equipment, they end up pulling out of those dealers. So the reps are going to do everything in their power to make sure you have what you need to keep you happy. So just another tip to help you guys out. I'm lucky. I have great dealers from no matter what brand I use between my rights. Between the right I just bought, the Scag that I have, and then my walkers, I have excellent dealers, excellent dealer support, but that's always an option to bypass the dealer and go right to the rep. So I hope this helps you out. Any questions, leave it below, and I will try to answer as best I can.